Hello and welcome to part 2 of my 24 in 2024 book list. For 2024, I am separating my priority reads into the categories that I read the most. So we're going to see 6 books from each category. And on my channel, we typically see fantasy romance, traditionally published fantasy, indie published fantasy, and horror. And on top of that, each category will have 3 new releases and 3 backlist. You already saw the backlist in the previous video, so this one will be all about the new releases in 2024 that I can't wait to get to. I'm going to go in the same order that I did in part 1, so let's start with traditionally published fantasy. I'm being a little delulu with my fantasy picks because only one of these actually has a confirmed publication date, but I'm just gonna manifest the other 2 into publishing in the new year. So you know what, let's start with the one that has a real publication date. First off, we have How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. I'm really excited about this one. Django Wexler is a previous author that I have loved. This trilogy right here is one of my all-time favorites. I enjoyed the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy so much. I cannot wait to read more from him because I actually have not continued yet into exploring more of Django Wexler. This story follows our main character who is stuck in a time loop, and she tires of trying to defeat the Dark Lord, so she just decides to become the Dark Lord instead. And I'm expecting a decent amount of humor in this one. I do think that Django Wexler balances humor and serious moments quite well in the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy, so I'm hoping we get the same in this one. I think it might lean a little bit more to the humor side than the serious side, but I also just think that Django Wexler is really good at really cool, unique magic systems and world building, and if his characters in the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy are anything to stand by, I will root for this character as she becomes the Dark Lord so heavily. I will love her and be invested and want to see her achieve everything she puts her mind to. So I'm really excited about this one. I think it's going to be really fun. And then the next one, which does not have a set publication date, is Gods and Game Masters by Rosaria Munda. The Aurelian Cycle by this author became one of my all-time favorite series, if not my all-time favorite series, pretty quickly as I read it. There's just such beautiful discussions in this about power corrupting and who you are and your identity and so much more. And I really, really love her prose. I love the way she speaks, and I really, really relate to these characters. So I'm really excited for Gods and Game Master. There is no synopsis on Goodreads, but there is a little bit of an update on her website, and it does say publication aimed for fall 2024, which is a little hopeful for me. This is pitched as a speculative retelling of the Trojan War, which I'm not normally a retelling person, but I would say this is a heavy retelling of Plato's Republic, and I really enjoyed this one. It's pitched as a YA Circe meets Ready Player One, and that already captures my attention. On her website it says this story is going to empower 2 of Troy's most well-known tragic figures and rewrite their fates, and I'm just really excited. If I know one thing, Rosaria Munda can make me feel, and I am ready to feel again. And then our last traditionally published fantasy that I want to get to in 2024 also doesn't have a release date on Goodreads, and I've seen nothing but a title, which is the second book in the Hierarchy series by James Islington. So it is called The Strength of the Few, which is the sequel to The Will of the Many. I need it. I need it right now. If you have not picked up The Will of the Many, I need you to. It's so good. In this story, we're following our main character, who is from a rival nation. His nation is conquered by the Hierarchy. Essentially, his whole entire family is killed off, but he escapes and ends up being an orphan and hiding himself from the ruling powers until he is one day adopted and asked to spy for one of the families really high up and sent to a school to unmask what's really going on there. I think that this one is so cool, and if you've read it and you've read the ending, you know we need book 2. So if James Islington does not release it in 2024, I'm gonna cry because, like, I need to know what's gonna happen next. I just need it. So this is me manifesting it into reality. It's coming in 2024 and I need to read it. Those are the 3 traditionally published fantasy new releases that I need to get to. Our next category is going to be fantasy romance. I'm really excited for a lot of fantasy romance coming out in the new year. I've seen a lot of them. I think romantasy is having its time to shine. I mean, it's been trending for a while, but I think we're really seeing it grow in popularity, and I love it too. So I'm really excited that everyone else is as well. The first one on this list is a sequel, and it is A Promise of Peridot which is the sequel to A Dawn of Onyx, which I read earlier, and I really, really loved this romance. I don't think the world building is the best, but the banter was bantering, and I was here for it every single step of the way, so I cannot wait to get to the sequel. I think it's going to be really cool to see this world expand, and since this was a debut, I'm excited to see how the author does grow, because I think sometimes your book 1 to book 2 can be such a drastic change, and I'm really excited to see that because I really loved the characters in this one, and I'm excited to continue loving them, as well as fall in love with more of the world building and stuff. In this one, we're essentially following our main character, Arwen, who is a healer. Her brother has gotten into some mischief. She lives in Amber, and Amber is at war with the Onyx Kingdom. When someone comes to grab her brother, she ends up offering up her skills as a healer to these guys to let her brother run free. Essentially, she trades her life for his, and she ends up being kidnapped and go to the Onyx Kingdom and forced to heal everyone in his kingdom. All we know about the Onyx King is that he's bad and he's dangerous, and the Onyx Kingdom needs to be destroyed. We're gonna learn that nothing is ever as it seems. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue on in this series, and if you love a good, like, rival banter, I think that you could really enjoy this one. The next one on my list is also a sequel. It is Ash and Feather by S.M. Gaither. I read Flame and Sparrow earlier, literally only a month ago, and I just thought it was such a fun popcorn read for me. I really got into our characters and watching their love grow, and I also really thought the world building was really interesting in the latter half of it. I really enjoyed where the story went, and I'm excited to see where it continues. I remember finishing book 1 and just being like, book 2 now? The author's note at the end of book 1 does say a spring publication for book 2, and on Goodreads, it currently has a May 30th publication date, but it does say the publication is not final. Since it is an indie, their dates tend to be a little bit more flexible and moving, and it will come when it comes, and I'm really excited for it, so I hope it comes sooner rather than later. Flame and Sparrow follows our main character, who, on the eve of her 12th birthday, finds her sister murdered by divine beings. She then spends the rest of her life hating the gods and trying to bring them down, when she gets a run-in with the fire god, and she ends up pledging herself to his service in order to take him down from the inside. We all know what this is leading to in a fantasy romance, and let me tell you, it leads to some fiery moments because, you know, he's the fire god. I'm funny. And I just ate up their character interactions, and I can't wait to see what book 2 holds for me. I know it's going to be happily ever after. It's in the Goodreads synopsis that book 2 will end in a happily ever after, but how they get there, I think I am going to burn. And our last fantasy romance is A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. If you don't know, Daniel L. Jensen writes the Bridge Kingdom series, which is a set of a bunch of duologies, and I absolutely adore that series. And I think that she has a really cool balance for me of fantasy and romance. I found myself captivated by the romance in the Bridge Kingdom, but also really intrigued by the world building, and sometimes I find in fantasy romance, one pulls me more than the other. Normally the romance, so I always find when a fantasy world is really well done, I really engage into the fantasy romance, and I think that Daniel L. Jensen does this really well, so I'm really excited for the start of her new series. I really don't know a lot about this one, I've just been anticipating it because of my love for the Bridge Kingdom. There's something about a shield maiden who has been blessed by the gods with a power, fights to unite a kingdom under a power-hungry king, but she's also fighting against her love for his fiery son. I feel like there's going to be a little bit of forced proximity, probably some training, and I'm really excited. I know that there's a little bit of a destiny for her, a prophecy that has said that someone like her with the magic of the gods will come and save them. I typically like a story like that. I like a main character who has a lot of power and isn't afraid to use it in a fantasy romance. I like when characters are feisty, so the fact that we're describing his son as fiery makes me intrigued, and I'm just really excited to see where this one goes. I know it's Norse inspired as well, which I'm really excited to read about. Okay, there we have my 3 fantasy romance new releases that I need to read. Let's move on to indie fantasy. The indie fantasy category actually looks very different for me. All you're going to see is one author. If you didn't know, this year I fell in love with Rob J. Hayes. I think that he has such a incredible writing technique and style. I think he has a pretty good balance of making me completely feel for a character, have a lot of stakes in his story, as well as have this really interesting world building that I really care about. These are 2 books that I will be screaming about from the rooftop for years and years to come. He's doing something in 2024 that I am so excited about, and I backed as soon as I heard about it. He made a Kickstarter to back his next 3 novels. This is called the God Eater Saga. So in 2024, 3 novels from him are all publishing, and they're all book 1 of a trilogy. So he's calling it like the trilogy of trilogies, and I'm so excited to see this. So what this means is that I'm putting all 3 of these first books on my 2024 list. So the God Eater Saga will span 3,000 years. We have a main trilogy which starts with Harold, which is the first book that I plan on getting to. And then we have a trilogy that's set 1,000 years before Harold, and the first book is called Deathless. And then we have a second prequel trilogy that is set 3,000 years before Harold, which is called Demon. He says he's wrote it so that they all stand independently and you can read in any order, but they do add up to a greater whole. So by reading all 3 books first, you get a bigger understanding of the world and the epic scope of everything happening. And there are some immortal characters, he says, in this, so there will be some crossover characters. And I'm just really overall excited to get to this trilogy, and I think this is such a unique idea. And within this trilogy, I know that the magic system has something to do about devouring angels. You devour angels to get their magic and the immortality in their blood. I think this sounds really dark. The first book, Harold, is the most epic fantasy of the 3. We're going to follow multiple POVs, and it is what I'm most excited about. But then the other 2 books are about 1/3 of the length, he says, and these are just prequels that talk about really important parts of history. I'm just really, really excited about this. So that's why I put all 3 on, because I want to get to them, because I just know that Rob J. Hayes is about to blow me out of the water. So those are the 3 indie fantasy that I cannot wait to get to. And last on this list is horror. The first one on this list is Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes, who wrote Dead Silence, which I enjoyed but I didn't love, but I'm always looking to read more sci-fi horror, and Ghost Stations is a sci-fi horror just like Dead Silence was. We're following a crew who must survive on a planet where things are not as it seems. That's all I know about it, and that's like all I want to know. I'm excited to see maybe the planet come to get them and things like that. I always think that the scariness of the unknown that is space is really exciting to read about, which is why I love a sci-fi horror. The next one is a sequel that I'm really excited about, which is Clown in a Cornfield 3, The Church of Friendo, which that title has me in its grips. I don't really know what to tell you about this one because it is the 3rd in a series. It is reminiscent of things like Scream and Halloween, where you're just seeing the same killer come back time and time again in new ways. I think it really reminds me of Scream in a lot of ways. It has some politics to it, and I really just love Adam Caesar's writing. I think it's really engaging. I tend to care about what's going on, and I love the underlying politics that come into his stories as well. The fact that it's called The Church of Friendo makes me think there's going to be some kind of like friendo cult, and I'm really excited to see what happens there. I hope that this one is just as good, and I'm expecting it to be just as good as the other 2. And the last one on this list is actually a thriller, an author that I've read everything from so far, and every single year I make it a goal to read his new book, and I'm really excited for it. He's been hit or miss for me, mostly misses, but the hits are hits. So The Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I'm really excited about this one. I honestly don't know a lot about it. I like to go into a thriller a little bit not knowing, just because thrillers can let me down a lot of the time. I believe that this is his first male POV, so I'm really excited about it, and there's something about tense. That's all I know, which is kind of weird. I am very hit or miss with Riley Sager. I love some, I hate some, and so I'm just excited to see where my thoughts lie on this one, and I think it's fun to read a hyped book with everyone, and I know Riley Sager gets some hate, but I enjoy having read them and discussing them with other people, no matter our feelings on them, and I just think it's a whole lot of fun sometimes to read a hyped book. Those are my 3 horrors that I need to get to in 2024. I think I have a really good reading year ahead of me in 2024, so I'm really excited with this list and what's on it. Let me know down below what new release you're excited to read in 2024. And if you're excited about any of these, I'd also love to know your thoughts. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a tent emoji. And then if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.